Oh wow, this game is already sitting in my top 5 games of 2021 and the year just started. This is a no spoiler review, but I will be talking about the trigger warning that they show at the beginning of the game and going into more detail for that towards the end of the video. So if you're interested in that, stick toward the end to know if this game is something that you would want to play or not. I'm convinced that the Bloober team are masters of psychological thrillers. The last game I played from them was Blair Witch, and before that was Layers of Fear. And in all these games, while you're exploring, you're always like holding your breath and waiting until danger passes or in case danger comes along, and then sighing in relief when it passes. When you first start playing the game, there's some spooky vibes in the air, but everything is pretty easy going. It's like a little detective mystery thing going on, but nothing really has you on edge. As the story of the game progresses, the spooky vibes become more intense as gameplay areas that you thought were safe become less so, and the atmospheric sounds have you on edge as you become more engulfed in finding out what's happening in the story. Speaking of sounds, it really plays an important role as the game asks you to play with headphones on. There aren't any cheesy jump scare moments or anything like that, but the layering of sounds from the whispers to the impact sounds are all important to the overall immersion, and they do a really good job of sucking you into the surrounding world. The voice acting is good too, and I believe the voices fit well with the characters, especially with the main enemy of the game. Even when it goes into the split world mechanic, the sounds aren't fighting with each other, and it still keeps you immersed into the game. Speaking of the split world, Speaking of the split world, it's a unique mechanic, but it's very familiar in how it's executed. It's not always on, and you can't switch between it anytime you want to. What's cool about it is that it's a whole complete landscape that's inside the game, built and preloaded, ready to go. Because while you're running sometimes, this landscape will just switch in between one world to the other in mid-run, and they gotta have all that stuff ready to go in the background. I think it's pretty sweet. It really added to the gameplay. And so I'm playing this on PC. I'm running it on an old GTX 970, and the game ran on my PC on low settings. It lost some of the great crispness and ray tracing that most people will experience, but I thought the game still looked pretty good. And if you go onto the website, all the locations that show in the images on the website are in the game, so I can only assume that those images are at the highest quality, and that's what the game will look like, which is pretty good. Taking my 970 GTX into account, I did have some frame rate issues in some areas that weren't as populated as some of the other areas, but it did not hinder the gameplay. With that said, no game is perfect, but for me, this one is pretty close. It's not a real action-based game. It's mostly like exploring and going on a journey and discovering what's going on, but it's really intense. It's a game that makes me want to get all the achievements, and that's pretty rare. I give this one probably like a 9 out of 10. In my personal opinion, I'm putting it in my top 5 games released in 2021. Now on to the trigger warning, and there will be some slight spoilers going on in here, but not too many. At the beginning of the game, there's a brief trigger warning placed on the screen with another warning, so it's easy to miss. It just kind of goes on and off real quick, but it says that this game has some issues that people might be sensitive to, and gives a little trigger warning without going into detail of what that is. So people have so many different things that could cause a reaction or trigger, and surprising them like that in the game isn't really that good, I think. So I'm just going to tell you what that trigger warning actually is, or what it's about. The game deals with various forms of childhood trauma, child abuse, and the mental health of those affected with it. So what most may consider the worst form of childhood trauma is like one of the main driving points in the game. And while they don't go into too much detail of it, they do kind of like play around that idea, so you know that that's something that happened. And if it's something that gets to you in that form, or that bothers you, that may really make you ill, that triggers you, then you might want to stay away from this game altogether. Peace.